یه ماشین از کنارم رد شد و پرسید اینجا بستن، میدونی کدوم راه به آزادی بازه؟ شب 16 آذر همه میخواستن به آزادی برسن. سعی میکردم به همه چشما دونه دونه نگاه کنم. سخت نیست پیدا کردن خودیا. چشم خودیا از خشم و امید برق میزنه. همون اول یکی از پسرها تیر خورد. یه ساچمه خورد توی لپش. یه دختر با گاز و باند از راه رسید. گفت آخ اوخ نداره که، پاشو نذار بچه‌ها بترسن، چیزی نشده، پاشو ادامه میدیم.
آقا به سمت آزادی.
صدای بوق ماشینایی بود که خودشونو رسونده بودن به میدون. مثل یه پیروزی بود. دل شیر میخواست موبایل در آوردن، چون تک تیراندازا از همه جا نگاهمون میکردن. درست وقتی صدای خوردن ساچمه ها به گاردریل کنار خیابون رو میشنیدم، داشتم به این فکر میکردم که من چقدر برادر دارم، من چقدر خواهر دارم. ما دست همو میگرفتیم بدون اینکه همو بشناسیم، به همه اعتماد میکردیم جایی که اعتماد میتونه به قیمت جونت تموم بشه. همه توی مسیر میرفتیم بجنگیم واسه آزادی، تو میدون آزادی.
از خودم میپرسم واسه کی میری؟ میرم برای اونایی که واسه زندگی مردن. هر بار میرم بیرون ضربان قلبم رو 1000. اگه هیچکی نیاد چی؟ اون شب دیدمش بعد از 7 سال. همون آدم سابق بود، همون نگاه، همون چشما. تو دانشگاه فقط یه دوست مشترک بود که میدونست بینمون چیزیه، اما خب هیچ وقت به کلام نیومد. خیابون میدون جنگ بود، ولی من خوشحال بودم پیشمه. اشکاورا رو که زدن همو گم کردیم. نمیتونستم ببینم نه نفس بکشم. نشستم رو زمین و تمام خاطرات دانشگاه ریخت تو سرم. چند تا پسر رسیدن و سیگار فوت کردن تو چشام. از جنس نور بودن همشون. بالاخره پیدا کردیم همو. اون شب هر دو سالم رسیدیم خونه هامون. فرداش آسمون آبی بود. مسیج زد و نوشت دوست دارم. نوشت همیشه فکر میکردم شرایطم بهتر شه، یه روزی میام و اینو بهت میگم، اما دیشب فهمیدم ممکنه دیگه فردایی نباشه. نمیدونستم چی بنویسم. اشک ریختم. واسه اونایی که دیشب بردنشون، واسه بابا، واسه برنامه مهاجرتی که ازش بیزارم، واسه نیکا، واسه عشق.
مامانو بغل میکنم و میگم برمیگردیم.
لباسایی که باید بپوشم و آماده میکنم. به قول دوستم لباسای انقلاب. و این شورت مناسب که اگه تیر خوردم و مجبور شدم شلوارمو در بیارم ناجور نباشه.
به خواهرم مسیج میدم اگه شب برنگشتم تو خدا هوای گربه ها رو داشته باش. سعی میکنم به ترس فکر
نکنم. میرم که بترسم و بترسونم. قلب میزنه جوری که نمیدونی از ترس، خشم یا خوشحالی. همه حسام قاطیه. فقط 2 تا نخ سیگار مونده. نگهش میدارم واسه اشکاورا. چقدر سیگار فوت کردیم به چشم رفیقا.
نگه میدارم واسه وقتی که بزنم. صدای مهدی یراحی تو گوشمه.
بسته بالای سر گیسوان چه هیبتیست. دستمو توی جیبم مشت میکنم. میزنم به دل تاریکی. وقت آتیش درست کردن.
What is the price for freedom?
Including complete blindness after being shot.
My eyes? Take them. I can see without them.
Following a series of toxic chemical attacks against Iranian schoolgirls.
My breath? Take it. My spirit will breathe on.
Sexual violence is being used to suppress.
My body? Take it. My soul will fly free. You may erase me off this earth, but nothing stops tomorrow. For tomorrow is for my daughters. For them, I fight. For them, I live.
Good evening. Happy Persian New Year, Nowruz Piruz. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us here tonight. My name is Yasmin Ganji and I'm a junior in the School of Business and the treasurer of the Iranian Student Association here at GW. On behalf of the Iranian students at GW, I would like to read a statement. During the past 44 years, Iranians, especially Iranian women, have been denied the basic freedoms of a normal life. They have been denied basic human rights that many may take for granted in the United States. In Iran, women are not allowed to enter sports stadiums or sing in public. In Iran, women are required to have permission from their male guardians to travel overseas or have any cosmetic surgeries. In Iran, the testimony of 2 women is equivalent to that of 1 man in the court of law, and men inherit twice as much as their sisters. Iranian women's rights have been robbed and degraded, and these systematic imbalances of power have resulted in violence and oppression. On the 16th of September of 2022, the murder of an innocent 22-year-old, Mahsa Jina Amini, gave rise to a women-led revolution and has lit a spark around the world that cannot be extinguished until Iranians have freedom and justice. During the last 6 months, the chant of Zan, Zindagi, Azadi, which translates to women, life, freedom, has emerged from Iran and has been echoed around the world to portray the demand for basic human rights and social justice. Not only for women, but for every man and child who dares to dream of a free life. Today, as the brave people of Iran emphasize their demands on the streets while bearing the risk of being imprisoned, tortured, or killed, yet another exceptional form of resistance is being portrayed. University students from prestigious Iranian universities with similar dreams and ambitions to our GW community have been beaten, shot, and arrested for being outspoken for injustice and the degradation of human rights. However, the resilience of the Iranian fighting spirit continues to live on. More recently, in a seeming attempt to strike fear among rebellious schoolgirls, poisonous gases have been spread in the schools. These unjust and atrocious acts have only added fuel to the fire and have made Iranians more determined to stand up for their rights, respect, and equality. It is important to appreciate how far Iranians have come in this unbalanced fight and how they are now being acknowledged. Time magazine has recognized the women of Iran as Heroes of the Year, and the First Lady of the United States announced Shervin Hajipur's song, Baroye, as the Grammy winner in the category of Best Song for Social Change. Now, as the people living in the land of the free, it is our duty to uplift the voices of Iranians and raise awareness of the human rights crisis in Iran. Iranians from every corner of the world have been demanding their basic human rights, and now is the time to stand together in solidarity with all groups: women, children, LGBTQ+, Kurds, Turks, Baluches, Arabs, and all disenfranchised people across Iran. As an Iranian poet, Sadi, stated over 800 years ago, human beings are members of a whole, in creation of one essence and soul. If one member is inflicted with pain, other members uneasy will remain. If you have no sympathy for human pain, the name of human you cannot retain. These words carry such power for this moment. For those gathered here today, we must defend our whole and be proud in defense of Iran. As university students, as activists, and as humans, it is our responsibility to amplify the voices of the silence and give power to those who have been told they have none. On behalf of the Iranian Student Association, I would like to thank the leadership of our university for supporting this event. We look forward to your continued support of Iranian international students and Iranian students as a whole in the GW community. Thank you. It is now with great pleasure that I would like to introduce the president of the George Washington University, Dr. Mark Wrighton.
Thank you very much, Yasemin. And thanks to all who have organized this very important event. Since I heard the news myself, I was deeply troubled, and I am very pleased that we have active students, active faculty members, active staff members who are working to overcome the challenges that women face all around the world. Just before spring break, one of the organizers of this event, the Global Women's Institute, celebrated their first 10 years. Their work is directed toward overcoming abuse, violence against women and girls. As a grandfather of 4 granddaughters, I am very pleased that we as a university are active in overcoming the challenges that women and girls face. I know that the work of our Iranian Student Association, the School of Medicine, and our Global Women's Institute are all very important. As I said, when I learned of the death of Mahsa Amini, I was deeply troubled. And in reflecting on what we just saw in the video, in the comments that were just made, these are very difficult times, and we need to stand together. We need to call for freedom of expression, freedom of political protest, and equal rights for women. These are among the most important values of our university, and they are critical to fulfill our academic mission by encouraging rigorous discourse and action and ensuring all have equal opportunity to succeed. At such a difficult time for so many, I want to emphasize that our university is here to support you. I also want to emphasize that each of us deserves to feel welcome and safe on our campuses and safe and comfortable in protesting actions like those taking place that were highlighted in this video. We are a community that endeavors to solve challenging problems, and we are a community that comes together during challenging times. And I'm very proud that our community has come together in support of one another and in support of human rights in Iran. Being at the George Washington University gives us a powerful platform to advocate for causes we believe in and to have a positive impact in our world. We're in a very special place, and we have many talented, active people who are very creative in working to overcome the challenges we face. Being a part of this university also means that you are heard, you are respected, and your perspective carries significant weight. When injustice occurs, our community responds by becoming more resilient and more unified, and this has ripple effects throughout the communities here and around the world. To our Iranian students, faculty, and staff, we stand with you, and we want to strengthen our campuses and communities near and far to ensure there are always spaces where you are encouraged to share your voice and make important changes. In moments of hurt, pain, and at the same time, hope, I am confident that our university will continue the important work to advance causes that create a more equitable world for all. And I'm grateful for the work that you are doing to achieve this aspiration. This is not enough. There are more actions that can be taken, and I look forward to hearing more about what we can do here at the university. Thank you all for this opportunity to join you for this event, and I trust the program this evening will leave you with greater hope and leave you further supported and empowered in your teaching, research, service, and advocacy to create a more just and equitable world. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for being here. I'm Amir Afkhami, the Vice Chair of the Department of Psychiatry at the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. And I'm honored to introduce our exceptional panel of transgenerational Iranian American women who will shed light on this historic movement that has galvanized the world, where women have been both the spark and the engine for an ongoing revolution for political freedom, social justice, and equality in Iran. Our first speaker, Mahnaz Afkhami, has been at the forefront of the struggle to advance the status of women in Iran and around the world. Prior to the 1979 Iranian Revolution, she served as Minister of Women's Affairs in Iran, playing a key role in the passage of the progressive 1975 Iranian family law and helping establish the United Nations Asia-Pacific Center for Women and Development. In exile since 1979, she's continued her efforts as the foremost advocate for the rights of women and girls, establishing and leading several international non-governmental organizations, most notably the Women's Leadership Partnership, a global partnership of 20 autonomous women's rights organizations in the global south that promote women's leadership and human rights in 28 languages across 60 countries. She's also led numerous task forces and multinational delegations, including the 1993 UN Human Rights Conference in Vienna and a fourth World Conference on Women in Beijing. Mahnaz serves on the boards and steering committees of a number of national and international organizations, including the Smithsonian Institution, Human Rights Watch, the Foundation for Iranian Studies, and has chaired the Global Council at the International Museum of Women. Mahnaz has lectured and published extensively on democratization, leadership, civil society building, and women's human rights. And she has been the author of over 15 books on the rights of women and girls that have been translated to over 20 languages. Her most recent book, entitled The Other Side of Silence, a memoir of exile Iran and the global women's movement, published by the University of North Carolina Press, is an extremely prescient publication that sheds light on the history of women's activism in Iran from the perspective of one of its foremost leaders. So please help me welcome Mahnaz Afkhami to the stage.
Thank you so much, Amir. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks everybody for organizing this wonderful evening. I want, first of all, to congratulate everyone, Iranians and Americans and Iranian Americans, on Nowruz, our festival of light, life, and happiness. And I'm so glad that the moment this year when we're celebrating Nowruz, thanks to the effort and really energy and courage of our compatriots in Iran, the women, the young women of Iran, has changed so much that is the moment that we celebrate Nowruz, brings to mind the way that Iran used to be known. It was known as the land of roses and nightingales. And throughout history, that's what we were called. And then came a time that we started being called something not so nice, such as the axis of evil and other not very friendly titles. But now again, we have the real face of Iran, the real image of Iran, the real interest and culture and history of Iran. And so I'll tell you one thing. Because of the coincidence of my book's publication and this beautiful event that is going on in Iran, in spite of all the violence and in spite of all the pain that it has caused to so many people, because of its possibilities and because of its future. I have had a lot of actually occasions to speak about Iran of my time, and also about the work that we have done with the people inside Iran throughout the years that I've worked here, continued the work here on women. If you get my book and read it, you will see. I think it's a very good idea. But it tells you that I started actually as an English teacher once I finished my studies here in America. And I thought at the time that when I went to Iran, that all I want to do is teach literature and read poetry. And these days, I have really had very little time to do that. So I thought, why not take advantage of this beautiful movement and this beautiful time of Nowruz and connect what happens in Iran to some poems. I hope you don't mind. So, but I'm supposed to keep a tight schedule. It's only going to be 4, but very short. And so I will start with Parvin Ehtesami. Parvin Ehtesami's generation was one of my grandmother, and she was a Qajar, lived most of her life during the Qajar and then later during the Pahlavi era. And she looks back in 1936 to the previous pre-Pahlavi era, and she says, a woman in Iran was not a citizen. She struggled through dark and distressing days. She lived in isolation. What was she then, if not a prisoner? I think she was absolutely right, because that was a period when something like 1% of the population of Iran was educated, and women certainly had no education nor any possibility of education. So looking back, she was saying this, but she was also looking forward to the constitutional revolution and the changes that were to take place later. And of course, what happened later was that we had a system of constitutional monarchy that focused on change and focused on modernity and on development. It was not easy working with a country that had no banks, no roads, no judiciary, no university with these goals. But people were riled up, people were happy, not happy permanently or perfectly, but pleased with the changes that were taking place for the most part. The next thing that came about, it was all a series of changes focused on education and focused on development and on modernity. The next poem that I will read to you is of Forough Farrokhzad. Forough was a wonderful woman, a true feminist at the time when the word did not exist. And she wrote in the 1960s, and there was a long way between the two. I just don't want to take too many poems and too much talk. But there's a long process between Parveen and Forough. But Forough says, looking forward, she says about the changes that were taking place, she says, it's not about anxious whispers in the dark. It's about sunlight, open windows, and fresh air, and a furnace wherein useless things are burned, and the world pregnant with new seedlings, and birth, and opening, and pride. That was the spirit of the time, the 60s. And that's when I was studying in the US and getting ready to go back home. And actually, things seemed to be changing fast. There were something like, when I was here, there were something like 60,000 students in the United States alone studying with the support of the government to have the education and the skills necessary to go back and to help the country change itself. So it was not about anxious whispers in the dark. People were energized to do and see what they can achieve. And so when I went back, things had started. Of course, I had done my adolescent studies in the United States, and I had had the usual mythology of the United States, not the mythology, it was real, the idea that you should support yourself and you should work and you should get yourself, take care of yourself. So even though I came from a pretty well-off family, I decided I was going to work myself through college. And I worked in a dime store, getting $1.25 an hour, and having a woman called an Italian-American woman by the name of Rose, who really gave me a hard time. She kept telling me, Abernini instead of Afghani or Afghami or whatever. Abernini, get a move on. Try to do something. And I tried, honestly, God, at the counter. It was the notions counter, which I had no notion of what the notions counter was. But I tried my best to do what I could, but it was not enough. And at one point, they fired me, and then they hired me again in 2 weeks. And I asked Rose, sort of shaking, Rose, what is this? Why are they doing this? And she said, well, if you were a worker, you would know what to do. But you, I don't know. So I said, well, okay, if I were a worker, what would I do? And she said, you would go to the union. So I did go to the union. And there, the group of women were sitting and talking about their issues and challenges. And I stood up and told them what my problem was. And they told me, honey, we're going to take care of you. We're not let them do this. And they actually did. They took care of me. They had them pay my vacation time, which was the whole point of hiring and hiring again. And that was my first lesson, that if you organize, if you are a strong civil society member and work together, there's a lot you can do. When the guy who owned the store, or didn't own it but managed it, came and started asking me, is everything okay? Are you happy with what's happening? I realized that it works. You know, unions work, people together work. That was my first. And then I went back to Iran, and of course that second part was I was still not sure whether I want to live in Iran or I want to live outside. And when I got into the airport, the guy at the desk told me, oh, Miss Mahnaz Afghani, welcome home. So the very fact that my name was pronounced properly and the guy had no doubt I was home, made the thing definite. I was going home. I loved America. I loved living here. I loved the culture, but they needed me there. And they could pronounce my name, and that always makes a difference. And they knew I was home. So anyway, that was the second decision. And then the third one was when I had a woman who was a poet, Tahireh Safarzadeh, who came to teach at the university. And Tahireh was a Sufi. She was a believer, but she was a believer that didn't mind wine and didn't mind poetry and really liked men and, so that kind of a Muslim woman. And so very much a woman after my own heart. So Tahireh started this really wonderful series of lectures at the university. And she also helped me create the Association of University Women, which was very helpful because we had a whole bunch of students who were very interested in what they were reading in English literature, and they were very interested in the way that the English-speaking people handled their lives, got married, dated, and so forth, but they had their problems, not problems, but issues with some of the decisions that were made. And so this is the conversations. They used to walk me all the way from school to my office and talk about this. And finally, we started getting speakers for the University Women's Association to talk about major issues. Modernity, for instance, is poetry better if it's new, or is it better if it's traditional music and all of that? And one thing that I remember was that the guy who came to talk about religion answered the student who was asking, I put the nail polish on. Does my prayer count? And the guy said, no, if you wear nail polish, your prayers are null and void. And I was surprised, how could that be? Where in the Quran is there any talk of the nail polish? Heavens, think about it. Tahireh, of course, said this poem, the pure sound of azan is like the pious hands of a man that feels my healthy roots, no longer an island, secluded, distanced, I move toward a mass prayer, my nail polish, no barrier to reaching God. Of course, Tahireh later, unfortunately, I wasn't there, but the revolution had a really negative effect on her. She became a serious radical Islamist, but I try to forget that and think of the beauty of her feminism and the beauty of her poetry. So she was, to me, the symbol of Sufism and the kind of person who could make a cultural connection between religion and rights, religion and human rights. So that was the time of my university work and the time when I was getting ready without knowing it at the time, to go to the Iranian Women's Organization. Then I think I have to, nobody tells me anything. Very polite group. Usually they tell me, come on, hurry up, So I'll just do the last one. In the years that followed, Amir was good enough to tell you I did a whole bunch of good stuff. And we had a fantastic situation, 349 branches through Iran, 100 centers that helped people actually learn skills and be educated and be able to have economic independence. And the family laws that were changed, 7 months pregnancy leave, believe it. Childcare on the premises. Just dream about it, and women, and here in America, 40 years, 50 years later. So just think how good that was, and how wonderful it was. But throughout the period that I've been in exile, women, of course, maybe later I'll have a chance to tell you how it happened, maybe a little bit, that we got into the trouble that we did get. But we worked always with Iranian activists inside Iran, although sometimes it was easier and sometimes it was impossible. And the easier part, actually, was during Khatami's period, where it was really easy to bring people out and have them learn the new developments in feminism. But the first event that happened was the 1 million signatures, and then after that there was the Green Movement, and Simin Behbahani was a poet who was very much in tune with that, and she was someone who actually was given an award on behalf of the Green Movement, which was a political uprising earlier in the 20th whatever century it was. but she got an award from National Endowment for Democracy, and she gave me the privilege of reading her poem in answer to that award. She said, "Let green spring burst forth, let green flora come alive, let joy fill the heart of all who are grieved by this morbid ashen fall." This was, of course, prior to this Nowruz and to what the Iranian revolutionary women have done, which I have no doubt personally will end in. It started a lot of movements across the world, but it will be a deciding factor in how Iran will turn out. Not only that, but it will have a deciding impact on what the world of women, and as a result, the world of men across the world will experience. Thank you very much.
Well, it's very hard to follow in those footsteps, but I will try. Our second speaker, Roya Hakakian, is an award-winning poet, journalist, lecturer, and writer who came to the United States from Iran as a refugee and is now a naturalized citizen. She's a regular contributor to major publications, including The Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and The Atlantic, just to name a few. She's also made countless public appearances, ranging from a very powerful testimony this year at the US Senate's Foreign Relations Committee to high schools on Native American reservations. Her work mostly centers around the issues of human rights, social justice, and the conditions of minorities and women throughout the Middle East, but especially Iran. Roya is a founding member of the Iran Human Rights Documentation Center in New Haven and has served on the boards of Refugee International. Her memoir of growing up a Jewish teenager in post-revolutionary Iran, entitled Journey from the Land of No, A Girlhood Caught in Revolutionary Iran, was selected as the Publisher's Weekly Best Book of the Year and Elle Magazine's Best Nonfiction Book of 2004, among a number of accolades. It has also been translated into several languages, including German, Dutch, and Spanish. Her second nonfiction book, The Assassins of the Turquoise Palace, about Iran's terror campaign against exiled Iranian dissidents in Western Europe, was highlighted as a notable book of the year by the New York Times Book Review and selected by Newsweek as a top 10 not to be missed book and by Kirkus Reviews as a best nonfiction book of its year. Her most recent book, A Beginner's Guide to America for the Immigrant and the Curious, is aptly described by the Boston Globe as a love letter to the nation that took her in, and is also a timely reminder of what millions of human beings endure when they uproot their lives to become Americans by choice. So please help me welcome Roya Hakaki onto the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here, honored guests, and everyone who took time from this beautiful day that we in New Haven would never spend indoors. So thank you. I also want to particularly thank President Wrighton for his wonderful remarks, because as someone who's based in New Haven with that unmentionable university, we have been having a very difficult time to even extract a tweet out of our president, which he finally did. So to have the president be here in person and deliver those remarks was incredibly refreshing. So I'm particularly grateful. Now, Ahdiye and Lisa contacted me a few weeks ago, and they said, we want you to give some remarks on Zoom about what's going on in Iran. And I said, why Zoom? You know, we are all Zoomed out, and who wants to do more Zoom? So why don't you guys go create an exhibit, invite Mahnaz, who has just come out with a new book, find a moderator, let us be in conversation, and then have a bunch of other things. And they both said, we've never done it, we're not sure, how will we do this? And I said, I'm certain you'll pull it off. And well, the shocking thing is that I suggest a lot of things to a lot of people. It never happens. So I don't know why you listened to me, but I'm grateful that you did. And the reason we're all here is because of two very persistent doctors who are supposed to be doctoring and not organizing. So a round of applause. Amazing, amazing. So, you know, the holiday of Passover is just around the corner. And when we sit around the table, the Seder, the question that we all ask, among other very important questions, is, how is this night different from all the others? And I'd like to start our evening with a similar question, which is, how was this victim, this particular victim, Mahsa Amini, different from all the other victims that had come before? There is no shortage of victims in Iran. There have been a lot of violations of human rights. Many women have been on the streets. They've been arrested. They've been beaten. But why this particular woman, why this particular victim managed to do what she's done? I think it's a hugely central question. And my explanation is that, you know, every great movement needs a great leader, but every great movement needs also an exemplary victim. Exemplary victims are indispensable to great movements because they allow the population, everybody in the country, to find a piece of themselves in that particular individual. I think what makes the case of Mahsa Amini incredibly special, in some ways, for those of you who know the history of civil rights movement in this country, she has become the Emmett Till of Iran. She's the outsider, like Emmett Till, who moved from Chicago to Mississippi. She was the outsider who had come from Kurdistan to Tehran. She had no intention of staying. She was on vacation. And she was barely out of her teenage years. She was 22, Emmett Till was 14. And she was not there to be provocative or and was not there on any sort of political campaign. She was there for a few days to visit and go back, which is precisely what happened to Emmett Till. And then both of these exemplary victims, being entirely innocent, through an inexplicable act, encounter the unlawful dispensers of law and justice in, one in Mississippi, the other in Tehran, and they turn up dead a few days later. Well, the demise of Emmett Till was one of the most important starting points of the civil rights movement in the United States, and similarly, the demise of Mahsa Amini, in whom everyone could find a piece of their own wife, sister, daughter, and every woman who innocently in Iran has ever gotten into trouble with the law was within the image of Mahsa Amini. And therefore, this movement had the perfect victim who could energize and galvanize the entire nation. So that's our first question. And the second question is, what is the difference between this movement and all the others that have come before? I was asked this question specifically when I was at the US Senate Foreign Relations Committee by one of the senators who said to me, you Iranians, you stage some demonstrations and protests every few years. You come out, you excite us all, and then you go away. And so why should we believe this one? Here are my reasons. I do consider this particular moment the most important revolutionary moment since 1979, which occurred 44 years ago, with all the historical baggage that you all know about. And the reason this one is different, in my view, is because the conversation between the nation and its leadership has ended. The last great movement in Iran was the Green Movement, where people were out on the streets asking, where is my vote? Where is my vote within itself has the notion that we still believe in some modicum of legitimacy within the system, and therefore we are asking this government, this regime, to count our votes, to reconsider this election and do justice by us. That was 2009, nearly 14 years ago. That conversation has ended. The people who have been on the streets in the past 6 months aren't asking the government for anything. They're not making any demands from the regime other than for it to go away. So the predominant slogan that we have heard is, the dictator must fall, the dictator must go. A lot of this, unfortunately, or fortunately, has come in a very different language that we have heard thus far in Iran. But I think it's a welcome change because it shows the end of an era through the end of certain slogans that we have always heard. And in addition, certain red lines, taboos that had never been challenged have been challenged this time around. We had never heard in such explicit ways that the nation would address the founding father of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini. This time around, we have heard, down with Khomeini, and all the most important figures in the country who had never been touched have been touched. And I think perhaps more promisingly is the notion that this movement, unlike the movement in 1979, has not been organized or galvanized by any political group. Of course, this may be very well considered as one of its shortcomings, but in fact, I think it's the best demonstration that this is, in fact, a hugely democratic movement, because the demands of the people, the questions that they're putting forth, the issues that is exciting them, are the most basic questions and issues at the heart of every democracy. It's about the basic rights to be on the streets. It's not about some communist utopia or conservative religious utopia. It's not a movement that's driven by a radical right group, religious group, nor is it being engineered or propelled forward by a leftist organization or power. And I think the absence of these two political forces that basically have been driving the 1979 revolution is key in this movement, and a very important signifier of why this is rather than a political campaign for any group, is an absolutely democratic movement where people are articulating very basic desires, like being on the street and holding the hands of their wife or husbands or boyfriends or girlfriends. Now, I think the third very important question is, why should the rest of us care about this? I have done a lot of human rights work, but I don't think that this question is a question of humanitarianism. I think it's a pragmatic question that goes to the heart of one fact that we have all experienced over the past 44 years. And I can summarize that fact in this saying that unlike Las Vegas, where whatever happens stays there, whatever happens in Iran doesn't stay in Iran. So it is a very important a moment for the world to realize that whatever is happening in Iran, whether this movement succeeds, which I hope and I'm rooting for it to do, if it doesn't, the fallout will affect us all. And we know that from everything else that has happened throughout the region. We know that from Syria. We know that from the failure of the government of Iraq. We know that from whatever else that's happening in Lebanon. We know that from the drones that are being supplied to Russia. And most recently, we know that because a lot of the elite of the current regime have been shuttling their resources and monies to Venezuela, which is just next door. My ultimate idea is to say that just as we have dealt with the notion of COVID, where we saw a global challenge and we recognize that we can't fight it unless we stand together, just as we address the notion of our current environmental crisis and recognize that unless we all come together, there is no way of changing the trajectory of where our environmental crisis is going, that saving democracies around the world require the same sense of global solidarity, especially when it comes to Iran. So I'm hoping that those of you who are looking for a reason why, a place so far away from us on the other side of the ocean should matter to us, is because the health of our democracy depends on the health of that democracy. And besides, I think, it's a very important also for the future of feminism that if sisterhood is in fact global, this is the moment that all of us as a global sisterhood need to stand together to bring about the freedom of our sisters around the globe. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator this evening, Ms. Yegane Torbati, who's a reporter for the Washington Post, where she writes investigative stories for the business desk. She previously was a reporter at the nonprofit news organization ProPublica and covered Iran and other topics for Reuters. Her most recent coverage of Iran has revealed shortcuts and conflicts of interest in the development of Iran's domestic COVID vaccine, the Iranian government's targeting of dissidents and journalists abroad, and the $95 billion economic empire controlled by Iran's supreme leader Khamenei. She's currently co-writing a book about the last 4 decades in Iran to be published by Doubleday. Please help me welcome Yegane Torbati and our 2 panelists, Roya Hakakian and Mahnaz Afkhami, to the stage.
All right, well, thank you all so much for being here. I know we're running a little short on time, so, and there's still a lot more great things planned for this event, so I'll just get right into the questions. Mahnaz, you have been at the forefront of the feminist movement in Iran, of course. When you look at the generations of feminists and women's rights activists who came after you during the time of the Islamic Republic, how do you assess their tactics, their goals, and how those have shifted over the past 44 years?
Well, I think that they have been amazing. They have been extraordinary, both in terms of making use of what had been done before them, before their time, and learning from the experience of their elders and the ones who went before. But also, as the process developed, with the previous demonstrations, because we mustn't forget that the women actually went along with the revolutionary movement thinking that there's going to be suddenly a miraculous change in terms of democracy development and all of that. And so they were the first ones that saw that the first act of Mr. Khomeini was nullification of the family protection law and all that we know. They're being segregated, their hijab and all of that. So he came to power in February, mid-February, and the 8th of March, there was the first demonstration that women actually started, and of course the gentlemen were a little bit behind, like some few years, but the women really came through and did that. So they have been very much on top of things. They thought for a while that reform would help, and then they realized that it doesn't. And what they've done in this particular moment is that they have chosen wise, thoughtful slogans and ideals that are doable, that appeal to everybody. There is no set of demonstrations or any kind of revolutionary movement that has had the kind of reception that this movement has received. It's completely unknown in global history.
Because they've focused on sort of common denominators like white woman, life, freedom, things that everyone agrees.
Absolutely, that, and also the way they've worked with men. This is something that we as global feminists should take from them, that you can't be half of the population training the other half and sort of put aside the fathers, the brothers, the husbands, the lovers, and say that we are working on our own. There has to be dialogue and working together, and they have done that. They have done it under very difficult circumstances, where it's just simply sitting like this with a man is a crime, And so all of this together shows that they've, once, for one thing, consciousness is raised and mobilization takes place, they cannot be taken away. But also the formula in Iran, which was so successful, has been taken up by people who had not witnessed it themselves, but had gotten it from the cultural context. And it has worked beautifully, and I have no doubt that it's going to be an impactful presence on the global scene, as well as in the country itself.
Roya, I think as we speak today, the protests have died down. You see sort of everyday acts of resistance. There are pictures of the Nowruz markets leading up to the new year where women are shopping, without scarves, and it's, it kind of seems almost normal. But in the face of kind of the harsh repression and the really brutal tactics that the regime carried out against protesters, against their supporters, how do you think this movement can be sustained, and what obstacles does it face, and how can it kind of keep going and stay alive?
I'd like to quote Václav Havel, who said that being hopeful or hope is an orientation of the spirit. It's not a prognostication. I'm very hopeful because the things that we heard in the past 6 months come out of Iran are the antithesis to everything that we had heard about Iran. People weren't burning down the effigies of Uncle Sam. They weren't, stamping on the American flag. They weren't burning the American flag. They were doing the opposite of everything that we as Americans have associated Iran and Iranians with. In fact, if anything, it was a declaration of friendship with us on the other side of the world. These changes are hugely important seismic shifts within a society that we hadn't seen in 44 years. So, every revolution takes, weeks, months, sometimes years to come to fruition. And I think as long as the regime has not been able to, and we know that it hasn't, address the demands of the people, they're bound to come back. So we just have to wait for the right moment to see them return, and also prepare to be ready to support them. Because again, I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record, but the failure of the Iranian democratic movement would be a failure for democracy in the same exact way that the failure of the movement of Ukrainians against Russia will be a failure for democracy for all of Europe and the rest of the world. So as much as we need to wait to see what Iranians are doing, we as the international community have to also prepare for their return and be able to support and deliver every aspect of support that we can to them.
Mahnaz, in your book, which was published, of course, late last year, you write very eloquently about your own sort of efforts within the monarchy, within the Shah's government, to advance women's rights, expand their role in society. Some of those efforts, of course, met resistance at times within the government. The progress was slow and halting, but that progress was there, of course. But it seemed like the main blocking point for you all was society and sort of the fear of backlash from some elements of society and sort of the cultural backlash. Now it seems like the situation has reversed. As Roya was saying, large segments of society seem to have shifted their views on the role of women in the workplace, in the family, in the streets, and in society. Why do you think that cultural shift has taken place, even as the government that's in place and that has been in place has tried to block it at every turn?
Well, I think that exactly that is, the government has tried to stop that kind of inclination of the people. The government was the antithesis of what Iran is all about. I mean, sometimes I'm surprised how we can think that something like the Islamic Republic of Iran could be a sort of a matter of ordinary occurrence. It is not. There is nowhere on the face of the earth where there are clerics, priests, any other religious entity who's running a government. We have in Rome, we have the Catholic Church, or the Pope, but the Pope doesn't run Italy. We have other religions who have, they have a great deal of prestige and input into what happens culturally and religiously, and also impact on politics. But we don't, this is the only place, and I think that we as Iranians are really strange people, both in the sense that we create something like the Islamic Republic, which is not like any other Muslim country either, because Saddam Hussein did not run the masjid. Or others, you know, even more religious people, they don't run the country. This is the only place on earth where the mullahs are handling nuclear power, you know, whether they know anything about it or not. So that is extremely strange, but this opposite of it is also very strange. I've been, you know, maybe I sound too positive or too optimistic. I think maybe it's too much. But I have no doubt that just as the other one was the weirdest, the most unusual kind of an entity to come into being in the 20th century, and in Iran, of all of the Middle East, in Iran, and have the consequences that it had, this one is the reverse. This one is something that is taking the best of civic engagement, civic involvement, and the courage to define what that is, and the wisdom to define it in a way that is applicable to anybody, from the Parliament of France to the people in some hospital in Germany, you know, who stand there or from, you know, you've seen how it is. The signs of this are all over the world, from ground up to the highest place. So I think that this one is going to be a world-changing phenomenon. When exactly it's going to happen and how exactly it's happened, it's hard to say, because they are brand new. We don't know. Nobody knows how it's going to end, because it's just as we didn't know how it happens even. I mean, it's been amazing. So I think that we'll see what happens, but I have no doubt that it's going to be great.
Roya, for our final question, we're sitting here in Washington. It's the seat of federal government. What do you think is the proper role for the U.S. government to play, and then maybe more broadly for people outside Iran who may support this movement or its goals, Iranian Americans, people with no connection to Iran? What do you think is the best role for them to play?
Mm-hmm. So I was invited to speak before the Senate Foreign Relations. I met with a few senators after. I was then invited to speak to, along with a few of other Iranian women, to speak with Secretary Blinken, and a couple of other events that I'd been invited to. And from all of these meetings, I've come away with several fundamental misunderstandings. At one point, one of the senators told me, and I mentioned it, you know, you Iranians do this all the time. You come out, you go back. But this isn't the same business as usual. People were not asking for higher salaries. They were not asking for, you know, lower prices of this or that or the other. They're asking for fundamental shift in the form of government. And I think one message that we would be remiss as Americans not to hear is how similar the most important slogan of this movement is to the most important slogan of the American Revolution. American Revolution organized itself around the notion of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Iranian Revolution, the current one that we're witnessing, only does away with pursuit of happiness, because without women's rights, we cannot pursue happiness as a society. So we're not hearing these messages. You know, one of the questions that Secretary Blinken asked me was, how can we help the women and girls of Iran? It's a good question, but it falls short of the moment inside Iran. It's not about women's and girls. It started with them, but it certainly hasn't stayed there. And the question is, how can we help a democratic movement where every other democracy around the world is failing? So I think for rather than talk about what policy we can put in place, we have to make sure that our policymakers are seeing this as a fundamental demand for a fundamental change in Iran, that our policymakers, in fact, do believe that Iranians want to go away, surpass this regime, and that they're registering the demand for a democracy, and are not comparing this movement to other Arab Spring movements that occurred, because that's also another thing that I think keeps people, keeps policymakers and lawmakers from seeing this as not as a doomed moment. An example that I keep bringing up is an organization that I helped build in New Haven in 2005, was the first recipient of the State Department's funding for democracy, labor, and human rights. And that was 2005. We are now in 2023. It's 18 years later. So if you funded my organization to advance the cause of democracy in Iran, well, we have. What's plan B? Had we also prepared for the moment that the idea of democracy does take root in Iran? It has. And so as an American government, as the State Department, we should be ready and have readied ourselves for the next phase, which has come.
Thank you both for your insights. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yagane, for moderating so skillfully. And thank you again, Roya and Manaz, for joining us today and for sharing such thoughtful discussion with us. My name is Lisa Schwartz, and I'm Associate Professor of Biomedical Laboratory Sciences here at GW and the Chair of the Clara Bliss Hines Women in Medicine and Science Society. As the protests in Iran have surged forward, so too have many other struggles for equal rights and for a just society around the world. Many of those who protest around the world in solidarity with those in Iran and Afghanistan and yearn just as strongly for the day when all feel equal and free to live as they choose. The circumstances around these protests have generated so many conflicting feelings of despair and of hope, of grief and celebration, and of loneliness, of invisibility, and the triumph of collective action. Behind me on the screen are individuals who have been killed as a result of their involvement in this movement. At this time, we want to take a moment of silence to honor those who have been taken by violence of the systems they fought against, and those who have been forced into diaspora and all the hardships that come with it. We invite you to consider this poem written by Saadi centuries ago, which still stands just as powerfully as when it was first written. Please use this space to honor those who have been lost in your own way. Thank you, everyone. We encourage you to continue to reflect on what it means to honor those you were thinking of as we move to the next part of our program. Shervin Hajipour wrote the globally applauded song Barriere, which means for or because of in English, by taking protesters' social media posts describing what compels them to return to the streets in spite of the violent retaliation they face and setting their reasons to music. Haljapour posted his song to his Instagram page and was arrested several days later. But this was only after his video had received 40 million views within the first 24 hours. Though released on bail, he is currently banned from leaving Iran and could potentially face years in prison. His song and its message cannot be kept from the world. However, and it has become a powerful rallying cry for action, resilience, and freedom. Haljapour won the inaugural Best Song for Social Change Grammy Award for his work last month, and we think you will find it well-deserved. We will now play his song here with English subtitles. Thank you. Remember, Jin, Jian, Azadi, Women, Life, Freedom.
برای توی کوچه رقصیدن، برای ترسیدن به وقت بوسیدن، برای خواهرم، خواهرت، خواهرامون، برای تغییر مغزها که پوسیدن، برای شرمندگی، برای بیپولی، برای حسرت یک زندگی معمولی، برای کودک زباله‌گرد و آرزوهاش، برای این اقتصاد دستوری، برای این هوای آلوده، برای ولیعصر و درختای فرسوده، برای پیروز و احتمال انقراضش، برای سگهای بیگناه ممنوعه، برای گریه های بیوقفه، برای تصویر تکرار این لحظه، برای چهره ای که میخنده، برای دانش آموزا، برای آینده، برای این بهشت اجباری، برای نخبه های زندانی، برای کودکان افغانی، برای این همه برای غیر تکراری، برای این همه شعارهای تو خالی، برای آوار خونه های پوشالی، برای احساس آرامش، برای خورشید پس از شبای طولانی، برای قرصای اعصاب و بیخوابی، برای مرد میهن آبادی، برای دختری که آرزو داشت پسر بود، برای زن زندگی آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی، برای آزادی.
Good evening. My name is Ahdiye Pajouhesh-Ganji. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology in the School of Medicine and Health Sciences here at GW. It is my distinct honor to introduce Ambassador Milan Verveer to provide closing remarks. Ambassador Verveer was nominated in 2009 by President Obama to be the first US ambassador at large for global women's issues, where she worked with the Secretary of State to coordinate foreign policy issues and activities relating to political, economic, and social advancement of women traveling to nearly 60 countries. She led efforts to integrate women's rights and participation into US foreign policies. President Obama also appointed her to serve as the US representative to the UN Commission on the Status of Women. Prior to her role at the State Department, Ambassador Verveer served as assistant to the President and Chief of Staff to the First Lady in the Clinton administration. She was the chair and co-CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership, an international NGO she co-founded to invest in emerging women leaders. She's the recipient of numerous awards, including the U.S. Secretary of State's Award for Distinguished Service. Today, she is the director of Georgetown University's Institute for Women, Peace and Security, which seeks to enhance national and global security by documenting the crucial role women play in peace building and security through research and scholarship, and by engaging the global leaders from government, civil societies, and private sectors in conversations on the urgent issues of our time. Please help me welcome to the stage Ambassador Verveer.
Good evening, everyone. It is such an honor for me to be here participating in this extraordinary event, and let me add my congratulations to those who worked so hard to bring us together. Just a few weeks ago at that other university, Georgetown, the Iranian democracy movement's foremost diaspora leaders gathered in an historic event, the first time they'd come together since the protests began, to take a united stand for democracy and freedom in Iran. And just days ago, this Alliance for Democracy released the Masa Charter, which, among other things, notes that the way to build a free and democratic Iran and overcome the Islamic Republic's regime requires unison, organization, and relentless continuity and activism. And I think that relentless continuity and activism is a good guidepost for us as well. As we all know, the protest movement was sparked by Mahsa Amini's death, and it was led by many young women united in ways that we all have seen the fruits of their leadership. Indeed, it has been called the first global revolution that was begun and shaped by women. But they were quickly joined by students and university communities, by women and men across Iran, people of all ages, from all walks of life. They have all joined together for an end to the repressive regime and its dictatorial rule. They have joined together for democracy, and they have been willing to risk their lives for a cause bigger than themselves. Many have been assaulted, imprisoned, and killed. But they are catalysts for change. In fact, women in Iran, as you have heard, have been on the front lines of change for decades. But this time is different, and their demand for woman life and freedom cannot be extinguished. After listening to inspiring conversations among Manaz and Roya, women I have long known and admired, I think each of us is probably asking ourselves, what can we do? After all, we are not in positions that may put us on the front lines ourselves. But we can support this struggle for freedom. As the title of tonight's program inspires us, the cause to raise high for social justice, the call to action. And there are many ways. Let me just touch on a very few. Students and faculty have been on the front lines of the protests in Iran. We in our university communities can issue statements of solidarity, support Iranian scholars at risk, organize petition drives calling on the regime to end its executions and death penalties against the protesters, to urge those members of Congress to express their support for this democracy movement. And tonight's program is a powerful example of what can be done when university leadership comes together across the sectors, also including the Iranian Student Association. And I think it's particularly noteworthy, as has already been pointed out, that the president of this university made the opening remarks, and I hope that his remarks will be circulated widely to the university community beyond this room. Secondly, we can demonstrate against the brutal actions of the regime and in favor of human rights and democracy in Iran. Organize protests, as DC students have been doing, holding teach-ins, film screenings, book events. You know, years ago, I had the good fortune to meet President Mandela in South Africa, and we were at the prison where he had spent so much of his life for fighting against apartheid. And I asked him at one point, I said, President Mandela, did you know we were protesting in different parts of the world? Did you know we had boycotts? And he paused and he looked at me and he said, what do you think kept us going? We don't understand the power of our actions, no matter how far away they are, in this case, from Iran, and the difference that they can make. We can use our voices to advocate. It was the efforts of many that led to a recent vote in the United Nations Economic and Social Council to end Iran's membership on the Commission of the Status of Women. What they have been doing to women did not deserve the kind of seat that that commission represents for progress for women. Others urged the UN Human Rights Council to investigate Iran's brutal response to the protests, and it voted to establish a fact-finding mission to investigate human rights violations, again, because of the advocacy of so many. Many in the diaspora can share information about what is happening in Iran on social media and opinion pages. Few are as informed as they, or as many of you in this case. We must not allow the protests and the pleas for democracy and freedom to disappear from public awareness. There is much that can be done, and it doesn't matter what position we hold, we still can take action. As the Iranian community is celebrating Nowruz, which means new day, symbolizes revival and renewal, let's work for a new day in Iran, a new day that supports women, life, and freedom, a new day for democracy. Their cause is indeed our cause. So this program comes to a close, but our journey continues, and our journey must continue. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your wonderful remarks and call to action. In conclusion of our program, on behalf of the Clara Bliss Hines Society for Women in Medicine and Science, the Iranian Student Association, IRSA, and the Global Women's Institute, we hope this program has served as a stepping stone to raise awareness regarding the events transpiring in Iran and has inspired you to be the voice of freedom and justice for those who are being oppressed in Iran, Nicaragua, Afghanistan, Cuba, India, and all around the world. As we reflect on the poem by Saadi, I hope we have come to the realization that we can build a better future for ourselves, our children, and our planet when and only when we come together as a whole, empowered by tomorrow free from pain, coercion, and suffering. This is the reason We cannot stay indifferent to global events. Terrorism, dictatorship, oppression, and social injustice in one corner of the world will affect all of us sooner or later. As Dr. King has said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. At this time, I would like to express our deepest appreciation for the support of our sponsors, President Wrighton and the GW leadership, the Department of Anatomy and Cell Biology, and our student volunteers. I would also like to thank His Royal Highness Reza Pahlavi and Princess Yasmin for their attendance in support of our event. I would especially like to acknowledge Nick Fulton, Jesse Weber, Teresa Simbalin, and Siobhan Hanna, who tirelessly worked for the last 3 months to make this event possible. And at last but not least, I would like to thank our speakers for this wonderful program. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for attending this event, and I would like to invite all of you to join us on the second floor for reception to celebrate Persian New Year together. Happy Nowruz.